What was the scariest we need to leave now gut feeling that you've ever experienced? Serious. Surfing a fairly secluded reef break offshore across a channel. This place is in a very southern state of Australia. Overcast weather, but a still amazing day for the waves. I was surfing with only one other guy. We were trading waves and getting to know each other in between sets. I asked what he did for a living and he was a marine biologist. We'd both recently moved to the area and were new to surfing it as well, despite it being extremely good surf. After 40 minutes he says, "I don't like this. Something feels off. I feel like I'm being watched. Like I'm bait." I didn't want to leave as it was excellent surf. But this guy was a marine biologist, so I took his instinct as a sign to play it safe. We paddled back across the deep channel together as quickly as we could without panicking and walked the 15 minutes trek back to the car park talking shit the whole way. I got his mobile number for future surfs together given how small town it is here and not knowing anyone. We noticed a 15 feet inflatable boat pull up near the reef and hang around for a bit without much thought. Later that night while looking at my social media, I read about 3 fishermen at the same location we were at that morning. At the same time, in their boat, as they pulled up to check their cray pots on the beach side of the reef, they were circled twice by a great white shark that was as big as their boat. That guy most likely saved me from a horrible experience that day. I messaged him with the link to the Facebook page with the comments regarding their experience. Chills ran through my body for 8 good 20 minutes. He was adamant he felt the presence of something and he was right. Viewing to see a flat that didn't exist. Not my story, but one my mum told me from her 20s when she was living and working in London, UK. I'll do my best to retell it. Also, I'm dyslexic, so apologies in advance for grammar. This story always gives me the creeps though when I think about it. So back in her 20s my mum was living in London and looking to move into a slightly bigger place. She'd found a really good price for a flat slightly out from the area she was hoping. She'd called the agent to book a viewing and that's when things turned odd. So the guy booking the viewing starting asking weird requests and questions, such as to bring her passport, her age, race, and physical appearance. Mold she be coming on her own? Did she have a car or would she be getting the bus? He very persistent that she should arrive by bus as it would be easiest for her. Explains it was a straight road down from the bus stop to the apartment block. Obviously quite unnerved by this call but still interested because the flat looked ideal. She and my dad, who were dating at the time, decided to check the exterior and surrounding area. The day before the viewing they drove there. First passing the bus stop he was indicating her to arrive via. From the bus stop there was about 150/200ths of a meter of derelict wasteland that she would have to walk past to get to the flat. And standing at the end of the street in the location this apartment block should have been was a huge abandoned building. Smashed broken windows. Graffiti. No entry signs. The lot. Definitely nothing inhabitable in sight. Still, when she tells this today you can see how much it rightly shook her. Of course she didn't go to her viewing. However, she informed the police advising them of the planned time and place. From what she saw, from following up with them, they didn't appear to take this tip seriously and little was done. A couple years later though, while in a pub with some friends, she gets chatting to a guy she just met through mutual friends that night. He was in the police and through conversation her story came up. He said that that area at the time of her viewing had a huge human trafficking problem. Still gives me chills. And D. Siversitant R. O. Moxo. Years ago when I was still living at home with the parents, I drove home around 2 a.m. As I parked my car, I noticed a man walking down the street. I decided to wait until he passed my car and was far enough for me to get out. However, instead he passed my car and hid behind the van that was directly parked behind me. I guess he did not think I was paying attention to him. So I called my dad, who was asleep, to come down and get me. He did, and when the guy saw my dad, he immediately ran away. I was lucky. Me and my little sister went camping in the woods very close to our house when we were kids. We'd seen this bald guy with a blue shirt and a dog walking around, which isn't unusual for the area. You'll often see people walking and say hello. For some reason though, I just got this tight feeling in my chest, and my sister must have too, because we both just gave each other this look. I don't know what it was that made me do it. This is very out of character for me. But I took a photo of the back of him as he was walking away. A while later, we see the same guy again near the lake. He comes over and asks about the tent we're carrying, where we'll be setting up, and are we camping with our dad? We say yes. We're just going to see him now. A lie. We must have had the same moment of psychicness, because we walked off up a fork in the path until we were out of view, then looked at each other and jumped down a path hidden by the bushes, and waited behind them on the parallel trail for a bit. The guy watched us walk off, pretended to play with his dog until he couldn't see us, then turned around and ran up the path after us. Thankfully he didn't see us hidden and carried on up straight where he thought we'd gone. We decided camping was a bad idea and went home. That evening my mom shows us a post in the local residents group, which is a picture of the same bald guy trying to break into someone's house. Apparently he'd just been walking around trying people's front doors and claimed to be a repair guy when he was stopped. I dread to fucking think what his intentions were, but it was very lucky me and my sister knew those woods so well. Otherwise we wouldn't have thought to go down one of the hidden paths. Doesn't "I need to go home now" feeling count? And it wasn't me, but my mom. Anyway, I was around 12 or so and my mom left to run an errand, leaving me alone. Very soon after she left, the doorbell rang. This was weird because we lived on a hill with only 2 neighbors. We all kept to ourselves, and we just didn't get random visitors, thanks to some conveniently placed picture frames. I could see out the door without being seen. I look out and see a young man I don't recognize. He's dressed in a t-shirt and jeans and something just feels off. So ignore him and wait for him to leave. But he doesn't. He lingers and starts smoking. Again. This is an isolated hill. I'm alone. And now I'm getting scared. I go and hide and plan to wait for my mom. Except she just left. Had a few errands to run, and I couldn't reach the phone without the guy seeing me. As I'm trying to figure out what to do, my mom comes home. She runs in and asks if I'm okay. Apparently she got this random "go home now" urge. She hadn't even run her first errand yet but turned around immediately, found the guy in our yard and asked what he needed. I guess he muttered something about looking for someone, or something to that effect, and my mom told him to leave. Apparently he was acting very strangely and made my mom nervous. To this day I have no idea what he wanted, and no idea how my mom knew to come home. But I am very grateful she did. I was at a family gathering. Basically a reunion but just for family within reasonable driving distance. Probably 30 people all together. It was at County Park on a small lake with some grills and buildings. Just an empty hall with some picnic tables inside. You could rent for this kinda stuff. The sky started darkening as a storm was approaching. All the coolers, chairs, balls and other kids' toys, etc., were brought into the building anticipating the rain. The plan was to wait it out since afternoon showers are common just about every day in the summer. Something in the air didn't feel or smell right even though it appeared to be just a regular afternoon storm. Hair on my neck was standing up and I was in full flight mode. Can't really describe it. The feeling in the pit of my stomach can only be described as absolute dread. I told my wife to take my daughter and get in the car. My brother-in-law took one look at my face and said, "What's wrong?" Apparently, I was white as a ghost. It wasn't even raining yet and I was full on panic, yelling for everyone to leave. Something isn't right. No one else was that worried. Mostly concerned with how I was acting. I went out to the car and as soon as I was about to turn the key the tornado sirens went off. We were not far from wherever they put those. Or they are just stupidly loud. Because it was deafeningly loud. Now the rest of the family is pouring out of the building to their cars. Kids crying. And I look across the lake maybe a few miles in the distance and see a funnel cloud. Got the hell out of there. As did everyone else. The building we had rented for this family barbecue thing was completely annihilated. Literally just a slab of concrete and a shit ton of debris all around. It was hit dead on by an EF3. Wednesday midday run along a beautiful river pathway near my apartment block. About 1 kilometer in I felt people watching me and directly turned around and ran home even though I did not see anybody. Closed the 2 magnetic gates leading up to my door and didn't see anybody around or follow me. About 10 minutes later 2 guys were at my front door trying to push it in. I was luckily on the other side of the door at that moment and pushed it back closed with all my force and began screaming. I managed to security lock the front door and text my apartment block for help. I was on the 2nd floor. And they obviously watched which apartment I went into. Looking back at the apartment's security cameras, they were able to see the 2 guys pull apart the magnetic security gates. 2 of them. The block then quickly changed the gates to a mechanic lock that cannot be pulled apart. I bartended and years ago I kicked this guy out because he was acting very strange. Muttering under his breath that he would kill my other customers. Just really hostile. He had missing fingers on one hand and he was kind of a bigger guy. After bar close I was almost finished counting money. So like an hour after everyone left. And I was just about to leave and I had that gut feeling. I looked out the window and that guy was standing on the corner watching me in a ski mask. I know it was him because of the build. As soon as I grabbed my phone he took off, but the cops know who he is. Now he has a vendetta out against me and he's well known around town. He's fucking nuts. I was freshly married in my early 20s. Living in Fallbrook, California. My husband, ex, was a Marine and was at work and I was driving home from visiting family further south. In order to get into Fallbrook you have to travel along this long dark and windy street called Mission Road. It's already a super dark night, about 11 p.m., and it's a little foggy as well. I'm slowing down and coming around this slight bend in the road and all of a sudden the hair goes up on my neck. And I feel incredibly anxious. About 5 seconds later, a young woman jumps out of the brush directly ahead of me. Maybe 50 feet away, on the left-hand side of the road, while waving her arms in the air and gesturing frantically for me to pull over. I swerved a bit to the right, slowing down even further, but I did not stop. She was young, maybe early 20s or even late teens, and a little dirty, and I was immediately conflicted over continuing to drive. But something told me not to stop under any circumstances. I got further up the road, slowed a little more, and dialed 911 with one shaky hand. The dispatcher said she'd send someone to check but encouraged me not to feel badly. Apparently there had already been calls about this girl over the last hour, and they were unable to find her when police followed up. I heard a few weeks later about some carjacking, robbery attempts in the area. Very relieved, I listened to my instincts that night. I stopped by a friend's house to watch a ball game. His wife and I were just relaxing and someone knocked on the door. It was the middle of the afternoon. He opened it up. He was expecting others might come by also. I hear him greeting someone. The guy was his brother I had never met, but had heard about. Very sketchy looking guy. Meth teeth. Scrawny. Long greasy hair. My friend had told me that he had a brother who lived in the area who had a serious drug problem. Buddy is talking to his brother about nothing and the guy gets a call on his cell. Whoever called, all he told them was, "Not yet. I'll call you later." Seems pretty obvious this guy has cone to rob and most likely to take out witnesses. I look at my buddy. It seems he has come to the same conclusion. Now my buddy's wife is a no-nonsense type of woman. Sweet, but athletic. On the tall side. She had left the room to go to the bathroom. Or so she said. She comes back in the room with a handgun. I'm thinking, WTF did I walk into? But she calmly says, "Ron, you're strung out and came here with bad intentions. You need to quietly leave. If you get any ideas, Chris, their son, is sitting outside in his truck to make sure you go." Ron doesn't say a word. He just turns and goes out the door. We can hear his old pickup drive away. Rapidly. Chris come in and says, "He's gone. I don't think he's coming back." They ask me to leave, so they can decide what to do. They have already called the police, who are well acquainted with Ron. The next morning my buddy calls me. The police said they found his brother in the trailer park, where he lived, murdered with multiple gunshots. They are guessing he was in serious drug debt, and had come to rob his brother. I told my buddy I was sorry. He said, "Don't be." I was in Taco Bell with my daughter and I saw a guy come in and back out with a t-shirt over his hand. I told her to dump her tray and get moving. We went out to the car quickly and left. Found out later on the news that the guy robbed the place with the gun hiding under his t-shirt. Similar situation here. Wendy's. Guy with a small duffel bag and awkwardly holding a t-shirt. Never checked the news but we thought the same thing. Place got oddly quiet when he walked in. Years ago I was at a club with some friends. I was at the bar and for some reason looked down at the other end of the bar and saw two guys quietly arguing. They tried to keep from being overheard, but I saw their agitated face. I went back to my group of friends and told them we should go. This was a popular club and it took us forever to get in, so they didn't want to leave. I don't know what came over me, but I picked up my friend's girlfriend. She was barely 5 inches tall, and started walking to the door. She was kicking the entire time and the rest of the party followed me outside telling me to put her down. When we got outside, we heard the distant pop pop and people screaming. We looked at each other for a second, then ran for our cars. I forgot to put her down and was still carrying her over my shoulders. Update. Dang. I didn't think this would blow up. It was the early 1990s and we were at a club in Miami. If I recall correctly from the local news, it was a drug deal that went bad between two groups. No one was killed but they wounded each other. And a couple of innocent people. Lol. I'm still not carrying her today. The legend are false. Those two eventually got married and they mentioned me in their speech. Something about the other groomsmen holding me back so that I don't get the urge to carry her across the doorway. Sitting in my friend's backyard with their 2 kids, my husband and another friend. enjoying pizza that my host made. It was a beautiful, clear day with no real wind. We're having a great time, just out of the pool and hungry for pizza, when I suddenly felt on edge. I looked straight at the kids about 8 and 10 or so years old, and just said, "Get in the house." We all scramble, and a second later we heard creaking. And maybe 5 seconds after it started, this big branch fell off of their pine tree onto the table where we were sitting. Thankfully no one was hurt besides having to pick pine needles out of our pizza. I can only assume that I subconsciously heard the branch starting to give. I have a question. I have always wondered with stories like this what the reactions were of the other people, because how would you know? And just out of nowhere, I feel like if I said to my family all sat outside, "Get inside now," they would laugh and think I'm nuts. But to have proof of something obviously being off, what did everyone else say to you? I was hammock camping while riding my motorcycle through Arkansas. I had a dream that I was getting pulled over by the cops on my bike. The flashing lights were super bright in my eyes. And as I woke from my dream, I noticed my blue hammock tent is lighting up like flashing police lights. I immediately felt an adrenaline spike and went into full flight mode. Packed my shit up faster than I could even put my boots on. Hopped on my bike in my underwear and rode a mile to the top of the campground where the showers were. The second I stepped into the shower cabin, the sky opened up and cloud to ground lighting started striking trees in the campground every 10 to 15 seconds. I could have been royally fucked up by a lightning strike had I stayed sleeping between two of them. Lightning storms in Arkansas are miserable and wild. We called it heat lightning, cause the lightning without the rain only came when it was burning up and humid. The lightning was pretty cool though. It would be completely black from the clouds, then 3 or 4 quick flashes, a crack, then huge boom that you can feel in your chest. I was scuba diving in Asia. 3 of us went to a reef that hadn't been dived on before, which bottomed out at 50 to 70 m depth. 5 minutes into the dive, we all get a very bad feeling like we were being watched. Ignored it, but the feeling wouldn't go away. Further 10 minutes into the dive, we all watched the silhouette of a white shark glide slowly past, right on the periphery of where we could see, then glide back in the other direction a minute later. The decompression stop to get out was the scariest 3 minutes of my life. A friend called me and said, "There's a wildfire 8 miles away. Can you help me move my horses?" So I drove down. She was wrong. It's 8 miles by car. Under 2 as the crow flies. We got the first set of horses out and down to another farm. The second set I am working on, and suddenly things get quiet. It's as if the world stopped for a minute. I look at the horse and the horse looks like it's ready to run. I take a deep breath and suddenly the noise comes back. The wind is hot AF. And the light changes. I told Sherry, sent the girl I am helping, "We gotta go now. No time to shove the horses into the trailer. They are smart enough to survive," and I let em loose. We run to the truck. And the barn is already on fire. Then we get in the truck and notice the fire past us and is blocking the road. So we jump out and ran to a small pond for the horses. And we dive in, hoping the fire doesn't burn us. It was about 20 minutes of hell. It might have been longer. IDK. It was insanely scary, hot and loud. We got rescued by the fire department's water-dropping helicopter. It landed in the field and pulled us in. We got lucky. The truck was burned to the frame. And the horse Sherry let go died. The one I let go survived, but was burned. That's most likely the scariest moment. I was camping in eastern Arizona with a friend of mine. We like to hike in this particular area. That's fairly isolated. We found a place probably 14 or 15 miles deep into the forest on small quad bike trails and set up camp for the night. We put out our fire and go into our tents. Probably about 15 minutes go by. I'm reading a book on my phone and what can I only describe as a roar sounds like it's about 50 feet away from our campsite. Never in my life have I been so terrified. I had immediate goosebumps and went into full panic mode. My friend and I both get out of our tents, look around and don't see anything because it's dark as hell. But run as fast as we can and just hop in the car. Immediately drove off and found a motel about an hour drive away. I will never forget that sound. I've seen bears in real life and looked up what a bear roar sounds like and it was nothing like it. The one we heard was almost high-pitched and just filled me with immediate dread. No clue to this day what it was, but I am glad we noped the fuck out of there. We came back the next day and everything was as we left it other than the coals in the fire were spread around a bit. There was no wind that night, so I don't know what happened. I haven't gone back to that area since and I have no desire to. Whatever made that noise definitely didn't want us there.